Welcome back to this bonus episode of the Black Doctors Podcast. I just want to come on today really to say thank you for listening. Thank you so much for your support for this new podcast series. The podcast has been streamed in over 27 countries. There have been over 2,500 downloads of the episodes. So thankfully this podcast is out there. It's reaching people and hopefully, I'm pretty sure, inspiring a lot of people just based on the stories that are being told and then the feedback that I am receiving. And thank you for that feedback. At the moment, I'm currently working on recording and editing episodes for season 2 of the Black Doctors Podcast. It's going to be coming with a couple more episodes, actually. I'm going to look into other career fields. I know the first season focused on physicians. This next season will look at the lives of dentists and veterinarians and pharmacists, entrepreneurs, lawyers. We're going to expand beyond the lives of physicians and the narrative of physicians and medical professionals. I definitely want to take the time to say thank you to everyone that came on the show last season. They, I'm sure, didn't know what to expect because I didn't know what to expect either. They were not compensated. I get that question a couple times. I've actually had offers for sponsorship and other things. And at first, I was thinking like, oh, that'd be cool. I can have a sponsored podcast. But then the more I thought about it, I think the podcast cost me maybe $100 out of pocket. I bought a program to help me record episodes, and I bought some recording equipment, but I use that anyways. So I didn't really come out of pocket with anything. So I decided, I'll just forgo the sponsorships and all that. I'll just focus on putting out good quality episodes and telling these inspiring stories, or sharing these inspiring stories rather, because these aren't my stories to tell. In that regard, I do want to just go through and thank each of the folks that came on last season. It started off with Dr. Nate Jones. He's a good friend of mine. We first met during residency. We were at the University of Chicago for residency. He was doing the pediatric residency program there. He was also doing a combined program, so he got his MPP, or his Master's in Public Policy, during the 4 years that he was there. Nate and I first met. We were at a meet and greet for new medical students, actually, which is pretty incredible. Speaks to his passion for mentoring other people. So we were, two of the few residents that were there. I don't think we met too many other people who looked like us at the university at that point in time. But the fact that, after our shift, we still came out to support the youth and the next generation of physicians. That's where we first met. We ended up clicking and were able to hang out and enjoy each other's company during the rest of residency, and honestly made lifelong friends in the process. He went on to begin his fellowship in pediatric emergency medicine. That's what he's wrapping up now. And on top of all that, he's very involved in the American Academy of Pediatrics and putting his Master's of Public Policy to good use, changing policies and affecting change on a national level even. So I just want to take some time to brag about him, Dr. Nate Jones. He recently took over the social media account for the American Academy of Pediatrics and was tweeting for their account all day. He's doing amazing things. He's going to finish his ER fellowship shortly and continue to do things to affect change in the culture. There's a third episode of the Black Doctors Podcast, Season 1, featured Dr. Bianca Bush. She's another one of my co-residents from the University of Chicago. When we met, she was doing her residency in psychiatry. She is just one of the best people that you'll ever meet. She's super sweet. She's understanding, kind of every quality that you'd want in a psychiatrist or someone you're going to work with to treat your mental health issues. She was at the University of Chicago for a couple of years while I was there. We worked together during this House Staff Diversity Committee. That's a group that we were able to establish and be very functional with. And it basically united all of the minority House staff. And we had different events and functions to the point that, we rolled so deep, 40, 50 people at our events, and we were all just young and able to network with each other and grow and learn together and be there to support each other. So she was very influential in starting that program. She left the University of Chicago and moved to Boston, where she's completing a fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatry. She's opened up a private practice where she's able to do telehealth, and she's taking patients, I believe, in Boston or in Massachusetts and in Illinois, where she has her state licenses. So you can look her up online, Dr. Bianca Bush. If you're looking for someone to provide for your mental health needs or for someone that you may know, she's a great person, and you should definitely look her up and see if she'll vibe as your physician. The 4th episode featured one of my coworkers, Dr. Rony. He, oh my God, such an inspiring story, how he grew up in Compton, was homeless for several years of his childhood, and he grew out of those circumstances to finally attending the United States Naval Academy, where he played sports and excelled academically. He was a crypto officer, gave some briefings to the president who was in the White House at the time, and just had a very high profile, very important job in the Navy, and then decided that he wanted to become a physician. He was able to take all the tests, all the prerequisites, and he shared his journey of applying to medical schools. He did very well and went on to complete his fellowship in general surgery. We kind of almost crossed paths when I was in Chicago, so we do know a lot of the same people there. We worked together for a little bit at the hospital I'm currently at, and I'm looking forward to working with Dr. Rony in the future. Fantastic surgeon, great teacher. He does a lot of work with finances and providing financial advice. He's passionate about building generational wealth and teaching other people how to build generational wealth. So definitely check him out. He runs a blog, Surgify, and he's on Facebook as well, providing financial information. Dr. Kiana Ward, that's my really good friend from Howard University College of Medicine. We were together for the 4 years there. She's currently an obstetrician gynecologist working up in New York. She's actively involved in resident education and medical student education as well. She's very passionate about women's health and health disparities in the community. She grew up in New York and just so impressed that she returned to where she came from, and she stayed on, after residency to continue to teach and affect change in her community. She's dedicated and driven. In the time since we've recorded the podcast, she actually went back to school, so she started working on her MPH on top of all of her duties and attending as program director for the or assistant program director for the residencies. She shared a lot about sharing the space and how, being a minority female physician, she has to stick up for herself, for her trainees, for her residents, and just how much that job entails, how much extra stuff that a lot of us don't realize these physicians go through. And then the 6th episode of the Black Doctors Podcast, Season 1, featured another classmate who wasn't a classmate. He was actually a resident at Howard. When I was a medical student, he was doing his orthopedic surgery residency. And Dr. Stevens tells a story about how mentorship is key, how he is very involved even today in mentorship opportunities. He was a collegiate athlete and made the choice between professional sports and going into medicine. He's currently an orthopedic surgeon. He practices down in Florida, and he did a fellowship in shoulder reconstruction and upper extremity surgery. So he's doing a lot of joint replacements down in Florida. He's also very involved in the Young Docs DC mentorship program, which takes at-risk youth and takes youth from Washington, D.C. and from the South Side and other communities and brings them in over the summer, provides mentorship and guidance. They have classes taught by medical students and physicians, and they learn how to study, what it takes to become a physician. And it just gives them a sense of pride and a good foundation in healthcare. So he's very influential in that. He's on social media as well. The 7th episode featured Dr. Brittany Halford. She is a serial entrepreneur. It's a good way to describe her. She's also an internal medicine physician, hospitalist. She shared a lot about finances and how we can gain that financial independence how to budget appropriately, how to pay off student loans. She shared how she aggressively paid off her student loan debt. I believe it was in 2 or 3 years after finishing. She did this by saving. She had her Joy budgeting method, and she was able to share a worksheet that we could go through to help us with our budgeting. She shared a couple of her side projects, her satin hair wraps. She talks about her background growing up in Flint, Michigan, and the health disparities that she saw growing up, as well as going back home to see her families. Last but not least, Dr. Curtis Apara, he came on the show. He was the 8th and final episode of season 1. He is also an internal medicine hospitalist. He practices down in Texas. He told his story how he attended Baylor for undergrad and then eventually went to, I believe it was Ross University, which is a medical school in the Caribbean. He talked about being a IMG and coming back to the States for his rotations and challenges he's faced along the way. We talked about his YouTube channel, which is thriving. And in the time since then, he's also welcomed his firstborn child into the world. So congratulations, Dr. Apara and Mrs. Apara, on the new life you've created. Again, I would be remiss if I didn't just go back and thank each and every one of these folks that came on and shared their life and their journey with us. I am currently working on recording and producing episodes for season 2. Each episode, takes about an hour and 20 minutes to edit and refine the audio. I know the audio in the beginning was a little rough, but hopefully you saw that it improved over time as I learned how to actually do audio productions. It was a crazy story because I decided, with all the COVID pandemic and the operating room volumes were low, I had a little bit of free time on my hands. So that's when I decided to kind of pursue this podcast idea. This was back in March or April. And I researched it and I looked up the equipment that I needed and I bought the equipment and started recording a couple of episodes. I worked on the album art. I'm sure you saw the initial album art that I had. That album art will be replaced and updated for season 2. So thank you for your feedback. And I am an anesthesiologist on active duty. I'm a military officer as well. So a couple weeks before I had planned to release the first episode, I actually got word that I was assigned to a deployment. And I had about 2 weeks to gather all of the equipment and gear that I needed for this deployment before I left for training. And I was going to train for a month. And I was actually an alternate for the group that was deploying. But I wouldn't know until the end of the month if I was going to proceed on with that deployment and go overseas for 6 to 9 months, or if I was going to be able to come back home. So with that said, I went ahead and buckled down and worked around the clock to edit episodes and get things posted and set up so that it released that first episode automatically. I was actually just checking in to the training. We're out in Texas the first night, or that first Monday when episode 1 was released. So I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to come back and complete the season or if I was going to be gone in the wind for a couple months. But thankfully, it worked out and I'm still the alternate for that deployment. But I've been able to come home and continue to work on projects and finish out that first season and now start on season 2. Thank you all for your support. Stay tuned. The first Monday in September should be the first episode of season 2 of the Black Doctors podcast. And every Monday we'll have a new episode for you to listen from, to learn from, to share, and hopefully to enjoy. Until next time, Stephen Bradley, your friendly neighborhood anesthesiologist, host and creator of the Black Doctors podcast. Thank you for your support. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of the Black Doctors podcast. If you like what you heard, please share, leave a message or a comment as well. Tune in next week to hear more of our stories told by us on the Black Doctors podcast.